Today we welcome Tyler Kiwala of Journey to Truth podcast. He'll be sharing some of his interesting experiences that he's had on this journey, how he got started, and also how we are playing this dualistic game here on Earth and what's going on in the world right now. Before we get started, if you are interested in CBD or finding a new CBD supplier, I've partnered with Hopewell Farms and you can get 10% off this very high quality CBD. I take it every single day. It helps with meditation. It helps with my health in general. And we have 10% off with code Lily10 in the description. And if you are looking for a Reiki healing session, if you need your chakras cleared and balanced, or you would just like to work with the inner earth beings, I have a channeled deep chakra healing session available with the link in the description. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Starseed Chats. Today I have special guest Tyler Kiwala here with us from Journey to Truth podcast. Welcome, Tyler. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. So I met you through Order of Light, Robert White's channel, and we live in the same city, so I don't think that's any coincidence. And I went to your secret space program conference last year, which blew my freaking mind. I don't know if I was quite ready for that one, but it was a really good conference.
Thank you. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was great. So yeah, I guess I was just wanted to chat a little bit about kind of like your origin story. A lot of people here probably already know who you are. I've been interviewed on your channel before, so some of the people have come over. But yeah, I kind of just wanted to hear like how you got into this and see what's going on. You've got another conference coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited about the conference. It's right around the corner. It's not secret space program themed this year, but it's going to be just as awesome, if not better.
Mhm.
A little later in the year, just a few weeks later, but I think the weather should be awesome. Last year, we kind of had like record lows and rain the whole time. It was kind of wild because it should have been warm, or if not hot,
Mhm.
So I'm looking forward to that, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And we just released day passes. So if people can't come for the whole time, they can buy a day pass. Live stream passes are available.
Mhm.
Um, just pouring all my blood, sweat, and tears into it, and time and energy. So I hope everyone enjoys themselves, and I hope everyone can make it out there. I know you'll be there among many other people, so it should be a good time.
Yeah, honestly, the conferences are life changing. Just being around that many like minded people. I was very new last year, like just starting out on YouTube. So I was kind of nervous, like being around other people, but everybody was so cool. And the venue is very beautiful. And just the activations that you get from being around that many people is like there's nothing beats it, honestly. So yeah, I'm excited. I'm
Right.
excited.
Someone messaged me, or didn't message, they commented under a Facebook post. They're like, I don't understand what the point is of going to these conferences if like the mass public isn't going to be there hearing this information. And I'm like, like they think it's supposed to be like it's strictly just about disclosure and getting the information out. That's part of it, but it's about the connections. And like I was like, it's about living your life and you seeing your friends and meeting your friends that you've never met online. You've only seen them from the waist up, through the screen. You've never met them in person, and just making that connection and hugging people and just feeling what it's like to be surrounded by love and just that activation that occurs. And it's like I feel like it just creates this massive ripple of light that just extends across the entire planet and ultimately affects the collective consciousness and raises the frequency of the whole planet. I feel like
Mhm.
there's a lot of reasons to go. You can take the speakers and presentation and information out of the equation and have just as much fun. It's just
Mhm.
about getting together and getting away and being surrounded by like-minded people.
Yeah, and even last year with your SSP conference, somebody made a documentary on it, and I know you're getting people reaching out to you. What was it? That kind of like
Oh, Vice?
yes.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, we had an amazing film crew come out from the Netherlands last year, and they filmed a documentary. It was actually part of a docu-series over in the Netherlands. But they did it respectfully. They came out, they reached out to everyone they were gonna interview ahead of time to get their permission. They got my permission. They even bought us some gifts. I mean, they were like completely polite and awesome, and they did a really good job with the documentary. But then Vice, which by the way is available on our Patreon if anyone's interested,
Hmm.
and Vice Media, they reached out to us this year, and I know from previous events, I've seen them get kicked out of events. I've seen them run hit pieces and smear campaigns on friends of mine under false pretenses. They come out as if they're, gonna like do like they're interested in this information, right? And they want to, help you get it out there. And then they pull it all out of context and they use the same tactics the mainstream media uses. And then you watch the interview and you're like, wait, that's not what I said. Luckily, my friend, he had an audio recorder in his pocket and he recorded what he actually said and showed people the difference on how Vice spins the narrative. And so we just don't, I don't want to put any of our presenters or attendees in the position to, to possibly have somebody smear them or their story. And I know how it works. So there's no room for that. We wouldn't be in integrity if we allowed them. Some people are like, well, any publicity is good publicity. I mean, maybe, but if that's all you care about, but that's not all we care about. Like this isn't about like, yeah, I'm not going to let somebody come intentionally run a hit piece on my conference just so our name gets out there. Like that's just not, there's no place for that where we're going, you know?
Hmm. Well, the joke's going to be on them because the next few years, I feel a lot of disclosure is going to be happening.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I agree.
yeah, people are going to be running to us.
I mean, it already is happening. The thing is it's out there and you can find information, but it's not showing up on TV or in the news, so people don't know about it.
Mhm.
And when people ask me questions about simple things, I'm like, well, here's this website or this article. And they're like, what? No way. This exists. There's a website where you can literally pay to have yourself cloned. I didn't know that was real. Like, there's things out there that are already, they just slip through the cracks. And that's how the change happens. And they do it. Obviously, that's how the dark works too. Before you know it, you're already, you know, charging, driving electric cars. The entire infrastructure has changed. It's a cashless society, and you don't even know how it happened because it just slowly, gradually happens
Mm.
without you even noticing. The same thing happens with disclosure.
Right.
Disclosure. Yeah.
For sure, 100%. Whenever the UFOs started showing up for me and I didn't know anything, I wasn't very spiritual. I kind of like avoided the starseed stuff for a little bit because I started seeing it and I was like, this just seems kind of like a little bit out there. And then once the being started communicating with me and I started seeing them, I'm like, holy shit, the Pleiadians are like it's real. But there's so much information out there. It's just underground. So much
Yes.
information.
And the fact that the media is talking about star seeds, I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah.
I think the only reason they're doing that is because we're actually becoming a threat. We're like a legitimate threat. So they wanna, like, ridicule us just like their normal tactics and make us look silly so people think that we're just nuts, they framed it as if we believe that we're ETs, like,
Mhm.
and self-proclaimed ETs, that's what they called us. But that's, like, such a it's misconstrued, that's not exactly they spin it to make us look a little silly.
Mhm.
But the only reason they would do that is because we are becoming an actual threat now to the dark, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. They said I can't remember how many, but millions of Google search, you
But
know,
like 4 million or something, I think. Yeah.
just wait. I know TikTok's blowing it up too. That's a good way to find, information sometimes. But yeah, definitely. I think it's good that they're talking about it. Um, although you're right, they are kind of turning it, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
Oh, yeah, because it plants the seed. Now you have millions of people who never even heard of a star seed. It's in their consciousness. It's in the collective consciousness now,
Right.
and it can only go. You can't put it back.
Mm.
You can't forget it now. It's there.
Right, exactly. So how did you get started in all of this?
Um,
Probably a loaded question, but I'm just
right. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just kind of curious. So you have a podcast now, you have some incredible guests. You've been like researching this and studying this for you're really knowledgeable. Um also, which is really cool. But yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, like, how did this start? Were you kind of like the typical starseed, had weird things happen whenever you were younger, or did it come later in life?
I think it was always happening throughout my childhood and my life, and I didn't know it was. I didn't have a reason or explanation for certain things that would happen. But it's one of those things where once you learn about this stuff, then you look back at your childhood and you're like, okay, I need to revisit that situation or that night or what really happened. And you start diving deep. And then under hypnosis and QHHT, you discover things. So, in that regard, it has been happening my entire life. But I didn't have any concept of any of this stuff. I knew about it because we've all seen the Bigfoot and paranormal shows and UFO shows on the History Channel and all that stuff. So, and it always interested me, but I didn't take it any further.
Hmm.
Uh, it wasn't until I started having my own experiences that I couldn't ignore it. You have to explore it then. And that happened when I was 24, almost 25. My mother passed away, and it was like someone flipped a switch. I just started having experiences, but I was being attacked. They weren't good experiences. They were like the sleep paralysis where like there was a demon, like the entity sitting on top of me, and a number of different things happened. I levitated out of my bed. The first experience I ever had was like one of the most profound. I literally levitated out of my bed, and I thought I was having an out of body experience because that's all I knew of at the time, that I had heard about that. So I was getting closer and closer to the ceiling of my bedroom, and I was like, my only thought is I need to get back into bed. And I didn't think I was actually in the air. I thought like this was some astral projection or something that I didn't know what it was. It
Hmm.
wasn't until I turned around, I got myself spun around and I saw myself in the mirror, floating in the air, and my body wasn't in bed, that I literally panicked. Like, I'll never get that memory out of my head because, like, a memory is a memory, but when you see yourself in the mirror, it's like a photograph now. Like, I have this visual to go with it that just I'll never get out of my head. But because what happened first was my TV remote started floating first. And when I went to grab it, is when it's like somebody turned off the gravity, but just for me in like my little vicinity, like my bubble. And when I went to grab it, that's when I started floating, and I finally turned around and saw myself in the mirror, and that's when I panicked, and I was literally like, it reminds me of the scene in Willy Wonka when they're like floating. I don't know if you've seen it, it's like in the air. That's what I was trying to do, like doggy paddle back down towards the bed, and it was working. And when I finally got close, something just took over my body and like spun me around, and like my arms and legs were like crossed like this, and I was just like smashed down, and there was this entity on top of me, and I thought I was dying. I had the vision like of somebody finding me the next day laying in bed. I didn't think I was gonna make it. I couldn't move, I couldn't scream for help, and I finally just talked myself. I don't know how I did it, but I found the courage and the strength to break free from that. And I jumped out of bed and I flung open the bedroom door and ran down the hallway into the kitchen. I'm like, what the fuck was that?
Hmm.
And I had two roommates at the time, and both of them were sound asleep. I don't know how long I stood in the kitchen before I mustered up the courage to go back into my room and peek around the corner to make sure everything was okay. And uh, everything was fine, but I didn't go back to sleep. But that was the first time, that was the first of many experiences that happened like that. And before that happened, I was an atheist, so I didn't believe in anything.
Hmm.
Uh, I grew up in a very Catholic and Christian family. One side was Catholic, one side was Christian. Went to church. I even went to Bible school at one point, so I knew about all of it, right? And the entire time as a kid, I'm just like calling bullshit on all. That's just the way I felt. I don't know why. I just didn't have any interest in it. It didn't make sense to me. So as soon as I got old enough to break free from that, I did, and I didn't want anything to do with it because I felt like it was always pushed on me. So I just broke free and just became an atheist because I met some people that were atheists, and I really didn't know why. It was just like I fit into this group, and it was something different and whatever. But when shit starts happening to you, like what I explained, you have to acknowledge it. You can't. You're forced to look at things that you didn't believe in before. And it didn't take long at all for me to understand like everything because it was always within me. It was always within me. And as soon as I like had the realization that, oh wow, there's so much more out there. Like, why was I suppressing myself? I realized I was suppressing myself, and it was this whole like massive awakening. Eventually, like the experiences happened for years before I eventually realized I could do something about it and fight back. If Prior to that, I was just a victim to it, and I didn't talk about it much because I didn't know who to talk about. But when I finally did talk about it was like the universe said, "Thank you. That's what you need to do. Talk about this stuff." Because now that I put it out there, like it seemed like immediately this whole snowball of synchronicities occurred that led me to a way to combat this stuff, and it led me down this whole awakening, and I learned about everything. And now we host this podcast, and we talk about everything and anything controversial without limitations, no matter what it is. We sound crazy most of the time, but it doesn't even matter because nobody knows the truth. There was never a solid foundation of truth to begin with. Just what we were told, which we're finding out was all a lie. So, people try to debunk things that we talk about and think that we're nuts, but I could do the same thing about all their arguments and their beliefs. It's no one really has any solid ground to stand on right now. We're just trying to figure this out together.
Yeah, I like that, definitely. Yeah, you have a very, like, peaceful stance on everything, which is how I am too, just open-minded and, we're just trying to figure it out together.
Right.
So, I did wanna ask you, so I know you have had some negative experiences and you've had positive experiences too. With the negative experiences, like, what did you find that helped, you know,
Um,
combat that? Like, how what for anybody who may be experiencing that right now?
Teach yourself how to lucid dream. Um, and if you, for me, it came naturally, but you can definitely, I mean, you can watch YouTube videos and people can give you tips and tricks on how to do that. I never had to learn how like that because I just somehow discovered that I could do it. And what I mean by that is you can like control the entire dream. Eventually, like you control yourself, you take control of your own body in your dream. And the very first time it happened, it was really weird. I saw a UFO in my dream, and I was driving in this car, and this craft like came over the car, and we pulled over to look at it, and it was gone. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I would love to see that again. Like I would love to go back and see that. And somehow I just like rewound the dream like it was a movie. And I went back and I played it again. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't know I could do that. And I did it again. And I was like able to stop it and like look at this craft. It was really wild. But that wasn't the first time I realized that I could actually control my dreams. Then I realized, then I started paying attention in my dreams. I'm like, okay, now I can like control it. I could look around and observe things and like notice things. It's not just this foggy dream anymore. You're like, it's another reality. And
Mhm.
that's when I noticed what I call the infiltrators, or like it was almost like a glitch, which now learned are dream walkers, like the entities, so they can like come into your dream. And once they come into your dream, these things at first I didn't know what they were. They would just show up in any shape or form or person or entity that they wanted to, and no matter what, it would start off at a distance and slowly get closer to me in the dream. And when it got to me is when I would wake up paralyzed with a shadow person on top of me. So then I'm like, okay, so this is completely connected to the astral realm. And I started, after that happened so many times, I was like, well, why don't I just wake myself up before it gets to me? And I
Mhm.
did that, and the first time I did that, it was almost this gigantic man, like, he was like, I saw him in the dream, I started running from him, and I ran into this closet, and he opened the closet door, and he was getting ready to grab me, and I woke myself up, and when I woke myself up, I saw a shadow person standing next to my bed, like, getting ready to climb on top of me, and
Mhm.
I could tell it wasn't expecting me to wake up, and it scared the shit out of it, startled it, and it just took off out of my room. Like, I watched it leave my room. It just glided out through the door. And that's when I realized, oh wow, that I can do something. So then I did a clearing because I had been doing clearings, but it wasn't working. So I put up my protection and went back to sleep. Because prior to that, I would wake up paralyzed, and I had to fight my way out of it. And then even when I would fall back asleep, they would come back again. It was horrible. I didn't know what to do. So I started learning how to look for them in my dreams. But then once I was onto them, they started showing up in different forms in different ways. And it just, they got extremely clever. It was like a velociraptor testing a fence for weaknesses. Every time I would find one way to block it, or I was onto them, they would show up like they would be. So they started off as whatever they wanted, and then they started off. Then they started showing up as like animals. If I would be like drawn to pet this animal, and then that's whenever it would happen. Then I was on to that. Then they would show up as, and they were cloaked, completely cloaked, and that was hard for me to navigate because I couldn't see them anymore. But then what would happen was a family member or somebody I knew would like come into my dream and like start warning me. Like one time, my grandma was like waving her hands, like pointing at something that I couldn't see. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And next thing I know, here this entity is climbing on top of me, and I'm getting attacked. And I'm like, oh, she was warning me about something. So then the next time it happened, my stepdad showed up and he was warning me. So I didn't even know what he was warning me of. I just knew that he was warning me about something. And I woke myself up. So I started looking for people who were warning me. Then they started disguising themselves as objects in the dream, like a clock or something that I just, for some reason, like was so mesmerized by, I had to go and touch it. And when I would touch it, boom, I would, then they would like hide behind doors in the dream. If I walk through a door, they would try to like get me right as soon as I opened the door. So I realized like not to go through doors. It's like this whole game. But then I figured out all these different ways, and eventually it has everything to do with your frequency too. I realized like, okay,
Mhm.
well, they can't even get to me if my frequency is high enough. Like I know how to stop them now, but they're just finding new ways. So I need to like take this a step further, and it is ultimately has everything to do with like your entire room, your entire place, your energy field. Like everything has to be protected, shielded. You have to go through the whole protocol. I mean, anything you need to do to stop that from happening and raise your vibration. And even then, they still find chinks in your armor if you forget. It's been this constant battle. And as I started doing the podcast, it got worse when we were talking about certain topics or guests. Anytime we would do an episode about reptilians, I could be guarantee that I would be attacked. They don't want you talking about that type of stuff. So lucid dream and just pay attention because you'll notice the infiltrators. And dream walking is a real thing. The CIA teaches it. It's a psionic ability that anybody can do. I don't recommend anybody practice it, but what it is you can just imagine yourself in the astral realm and like in like a neighborhood, just to give you a visual. And instead of houses, there's bubbles, and each bubble is different people's dreams. So these entities, they'll just cruise around and they'll dive into these bubbles, and then that's your dream. And then in that, whatever's happening in that reality, that's they eventually work their way to you. So it has something to do with the astral realm, but there's also a physical sense because I was seeing the shadow figures as well.
Mhm.
And the reason we see a shadow figure is because it's not actually fully invisible. It's not fully transparent. There's actually like some electrons actually there that give it some sort of tangibility. That's why we can see it at all, and that's why we see ghosts. They're not completely invisible. They have some physical makeup.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I was wondering, who do you think these beings were? Just random, like, negative beings?
I mean,
Variety?
I've seen reptilians, I've seen grays, I've seen just men in suits. I've
Yeah.
seen little goblins, I've seen little like these creatures with like jack-o'-lantern heads. I mean, like all just like these demons out of a freaking horror movie. Like this shit that you see on TV or in cartoons. It's like they're all real. It's like
Mhm.
it's just whatever they want to show up as. But sometimes it was very I'm like, yeah, that was a reptilian. This is like some agency, government agency. This was just like a little goblin or gremlin. Like I've encountered a number of those. They're just small little guys that float around.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's been a
Interesting.
journey.
Yeah, that sounds intense. They sound like they were relentless.
And I could hear them. Like whenever I would be on their parrot, they would like growl and hiss in your ear, and like you could hear the slack or the slask they call it, like the reptilian tongue. Like it almost sounds like a crocodile. like whenever a crocodile does that weird thing, I don't know how to, I can't mimic it, but
Mhm.
um, you can hear like the sounds that they make, and sometimes they're like right in your ear, and like I'm trying to fight them, and they're on top of me, and it's this whole battle, and it's like completely traumatic, and it's like sucking the life force out of you. You feel your battery draining, and like you're in the middle of this war, and like no one else knows it's happening, and you try and explain it to people, but I found out that like almost everyone experiences this at some point or another,
Yeah.
but it's more intense for certain people.
Yeah, I have a lot of people who in the community who have mentioned like sleep paralysis. I've never experienced that, and some people ask me about that. Um, what do you think? Do you think sleep paralysis is something negative, or do you think it could happen in positive?
No, because I've had it before where um, it's not negative.
Okay.
Like that, everything I explained to you always ended up in a paralysis, a sleep paralysis. But there's been times where I've woken up paralyzed where it wasn't like an attack. I just like couldn't move for a few seconds or whatever.
Hmm.
And like I heard, I think it was Dolores Cannon that explained it. Every time you fall asleep, your astral body leaves and you're connected by this etheric cord. And and she said sometimes what happens would be your physical body would wake up before your soul was actually all the way back into your body, and that was like a symptom of that. So you would be like paralyzed until you were fully integrated. So
Hmm.
that's one possibility. There's a number of like mainstream doctors that have explanations for it. I don't buy most of them. I think they actually just don't know.
Hmm.
Um, but it does seem to occur naturally sometimes, so
Hmm.
we can't ignore that aspect of it. But what I experienced was not most of the time, that was, like, beyond just some random natural occurrence, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like a lot of these things just been hanging out in the astral for the past like I've probably been doing a lot of clearing and healing, since the Orlando conference, actually. I was
Mhm.
downloaded with a bunch of memories from, like, Orion Wars and being in Orion,
Oh,
and then it's
interesting.
yeah, it wasn't fun, you know,
Sure.
just seeing all of that, but it's like it was like I was ready for that kind of that next stage, and then I would feel like kind of all those feelings, all that dark stuff kind of started creeping up again, and I had to like work through it and heal it. And then also the astral realms. I found out that in my sleep I've been clearing. Like I'll wake up where as I'm waking up, I'm like calling to Archangel Michael and just working with the star beings, just clearing the astral realm. So I think hopefully it's getting less, bad
Mhm. Right.
as we go. I know I've been waking up so exhausted from just clearing and healing
Mhm.
all
Yeah,
night.
that happens too. We don't know what type of missions we're on at night while we're sleeping and what type of work we're doing. Sometimes we have memory and bleed through of it. We remember like, wow, that was intense. Other times you wake up in the morning, you feel like you never even slept, even though you slept all night. You know you're busy doing something.
Mhm,
Laura Van Tyne, she specializes in the fourth dimension and everything I'm talking about. And she calls it, she says clean up on aisle four. That actually means clean up in the fourth dimension. And um, it's like their way of telling us it needs to be cleaned up. But that's what
mhm,
she does. Her whole life's mission is cleaning that up
mhm,
and just dealing with that type of stuff. And she does some fantastic work. But from based on what she says, I think they are making headway. Like
mhm,
it's not at one point it was so bad and it's still bad, but now it's finally manageable maybe.
mhm,
Uh who knows what's going on? I think they're constantly performing rituals and ceremonies to open up portals and new entities are coming in. And it's just constant moves and counter moves. People
mhm,
don't really visualize that type of stuff when they think of spiritual war, but that's what's happening. I mean, there's natural portals, man-made portals, and they're like CERN is creating portals. You don't know. Sometimes they don't even know what they're letting in or creating. Sometimes they know exactly what they're trying to achieve. And sometimes they need certain star seeds and certain bloodlines to allow in a certain dark entity. And that's why certain people are targeted. That's what
mhm,
Max Spears used to talk about. They need certain bloodlines or your lineage or whatever, your ancestral line to allow in. They know what souls are coming and when they're coming, at what time and where they're coming from. And if they can have a vessel, an avatar ready for this demonic entity at that exact moment, um, because that sometimes a powerful entity can't just take on a normal avatar. Otherwise, you'll experience something like autism or something like that. It's too powerful for the physical vessel. So you have to have the right cocktail of, a genetic makeup for them to actually take over the body. And that's what these elites are doing. And that's why some of these people, like, we can't imagine, like, it's so inhumane, but it's not, they're not human actually. And a lot of times it's not successful, even though they try to bring in these entities. It doesn't take, because it's just not organic. Anything anti-life doesn't have a place here, but they're constantly forcing that, and the transhumanists and the AI agenda, they
Mm-hmm.
want everything inverted. That's their entire game.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, the universe has been showing me some of those things recently, like the ritual stuff, and it's just insane. Like, it's one of those things where you're like, that can't be real, but it really is
Yeah.
real. So I think we're doing a lot of healing from that, and like with what's going on with the children and everything, they were having me focus on healing the children a lot. I think we're making headway, but yeah.
Yeah, we are. I agree that we are, for sure.
Hmm.
It's just going to be a constant back and forth, I think, until whenever, whatever, I don't know, but I think we all know there's some golden age, bright future, waiting for us. If
Hmm.
not already here, and we just have to, clear up to wait for the dust to settle so we can see it.
Yeah, we signed up for it.
Right.
We signed up for it. So recently on your Patreon, did a you did like a little workshop on the voice. What did you call it?
It's a voice of God, voice to skull technology. Yeah.
Yeah, can you share a little bit about that, because that just makes so much sense. Why I think it was from you, where I heard like a lot of the shooters, or there was something in common with all of these shooters, that they heard a voice in their head tell them to do it. It
Right.
That just
Yeah.
makes total sense. It makes total.
Exactly. So I did the workshop or the webinar because people know and they've heard about the technology. A lot of people haven't, but I don't think they understand the capabilities and the lengths they can go to and what they were able to achieve and are able to achieve. It's not just hearing a voice in your head; they can control your entire body, and they can even see through your own eyes. It's next level technology. I mean, it's beyond what we can imagine. But there's a common theme with all the school shootings, and anyone can do this research on their own. Just pick any of them, anyone you want to, and read the article. I can guarantee you, it's somewhere in that article it said the shooter was hearing voices that told them to do it, or God told them to do it. And there's a number of different other cases where women heard voices that told them to kill their own children, and just horrible things like this. And there's this whole epidemic, and there's this whole biblio I can never say that. Biblioteca Pleiades, if you know what that website is. It's like a Spanish website, but it's like, I think it's like a back door into, like, not the dark web, but there's like this information that shouldn't be on the internet, but it's all there.
Mhm.
Um, if you go to the website and try and search things, it doesn't really work. Like, you actually have to go to a browser or a search engine and type in Biblioteca Pleiades and then the subject, and you'll find all this stuff. And that's how I did a lot of my digging on the voice of God technology. But they're using this to control people and to, pull off their agendas. And obviously, we know that school shootings are tied to, there's a political agenda behind that, and the whole gun control and the Second Amendment. They want to take our guns away, so they create a reason to show us why guns are supposed to be bad, blah blah blah. But when you really look into it, every single one of these people were taking medications, they were hearing voices, and they target people who are have sociopathic or psychopathic tendencies already, people who are in their ego, the narcissist type of people, people who are easily offended or easily manipulated, the people that emotionally react to everything. They have no control of themselves or no self-awareness. Those are the people they target. And once they get into their head and they start hearing voices, they think they're actually talking to God. And one of the tricks that they do is they get these people to like start reading Bible verses. And that's why they're like, well, if this voice must be good if they want me to read the Bible. It's like this, it's such a silly trick, but it works.
Mhm.
and people actually think that they're these proclaimed prophets now, or somebody special, or even these certain ET groups are talking to them, and they don't really know that it's actually like the CIA sitting in a room somewhere, or in a van, or a helicopter, or a drone outside your house, whatever the case is. It goes right through the walls. But now this stuff is installed in the 5G towers, so that's a whole nother level. But yeah, they work on these people. They choose what they call sleepers. So they'll work on somebody for an entire lifetime if they want. They'll target them from birth, depending on who they are, their lineage, and all that stuff, like I said. And they'll work on these people throughout their entire life with this technology, and they'll groom them, unbeknownst to them, into a serial killer or a shooter or whatever. And they eventually can take control of your entire body and see through your eyes. And these people hear these voices that tell them to do things, and they don't know how to turn it off or to ignore it. So that's what they do. They work on these shooters for a long time until it's time. Then they're activated. It's a sleeper. Then they're activated. And that's done with trigger words and buzzwords that they create through the MK Ultra programming, like at a young age. I mean, it's a whole long, drawn out process. But those buzzwords, like we have this amnesic barrier around our brain, and whenever we hear a certain series of words that usually wouldn't go together, these are the buzzwords or triggers that they create, because they don't want to accidentally trigger you
Mhm.
just by one buzzword. So it has to be a set of words and numbers. So whenever that happens, whenever that individual hears that series of numbers, the movie American Ultra is a perfect example of this if you haven't seen it.
Mm-mm.
But when they hear a series of numbers, then they're activated. And then now you have a school shooter or
Gee.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean that definitely makes sense. But before getting into this field, I was very much in like the mental health space, in nutrition and health. And I know that mental health is like a huge issue. But yeah, I'm like, why would people just do this? So that totally makes sense because then they can, because it's right after, yeah, something like that happens. Then it's all in the news. Now we have to take away the guns and all of this, all that stuff. It becomes pretty like obvious once you.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Once you see it, like it's so intricate and so uh well I don't know what the word I'm looking for, strategized, whatever, well thought out. Um that it's so complex that you would never imagine, like, you can see why people are being tricked. But
Hmm.
then once you see it, it's so obvious. You're like, "Oh my god, like, I completely see their game now." But then that's it. Once you're aware of it, once you're aware of a trick, it loses power over you. So now you are less likely to be affected by it just by having that awareness.
Hmm.
And then they target cities. Homeless people are test subjects. This is a whole other thing. But when you see these homeless people talking to somebody or themselves, they're using this technology on them, experimenting with them. They're always trying new things, and it's horrible. They're like, the homeless people are being used as guinea pigs. It's not just a coincidence that all homeless people in cities talk to themselves. It's
Hmm.
just not. And then all the towers and the chaotic frequencies in the cities and the skyscrapers, which is a whole other thing in itself. But it's all designed to serve the dark grid, and
Hmm.
so.
Right. With all of that, how do you stay positive? Personally.
Because here's the thing, the planet is a beautiful place. Now, the system that they set up for us is shit, but the
Mhm,
planet is a beautiful place,
mhm,
and there's beautiful souls here, and love is real, and love is the only way. And like, just spending time in nature and wildlife, and with wildlife, and even just spending time with animals, and just constantly reminding yourself on how beautiful it actually is. And once you really start, like, I think I was shown all the dark experiences just so I could have the knowledge of it.
right.
And you can never really defeat your enemy until you understand how they operate and how they work. And so I felt like I was shown like so much, and there's so much I haven't even covered, but like, you really have to know the ins and outs of it. And I feel like that's why I was even put down that path. But then once you see it, like I said, it loses power over you. Then you can start to see the beauty through it all.
Mhm,
You turn on the TV or get on the internet, it seems like such a negative place because that's the reality that they want you to see. But you walk out your front door, the sun's out, it's beautiful. Yeah, we got some chemtrails and shit, but
mhm,
um, you did your little video. You can easily transmute those just with your thoughts. We don't even understand the power of our mind. You can just imagine like a dome over your city, and when the chemtrail hits the dome, it'll just like transmute it into love or whatever you want it to be transmuted
Mhm.
into. But it's a beautiful world, and I stay positive because I feel like I fully know to my core that we're ultimately going to pull out of this, and we're like winning this battle, winning this war, this fight. I know people don't like those terms because they're very 3D, but hey, we're here in this 3D reality right now to have the experience. So I'm
Mhm.
going to use those words. Uh, but I feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think the reason that we're seeing everything appear as it is right now, so dark and negative, is because their hand is being forced. They're being backed into a corner, and they know it's end game for them, but they're trying to drag as many people down with them until they just can't anymore.
Mhm.
So what they've done is accelerated their agenda to, what they might have had planned out over 10 or 20 years. They're trying to do it all right now, all at once. Like, and it just seems like they're constantly stepping on our head every day, and
Mhm.
just stomping us into the mud. But it's a good sign to me because it's surfacing. We're not living in the illusion anymore. The illusion back then, when we all thought life was great and everything was beautiful and we weren't hearing about any of this stuff, it's not like it's all just randomly starting to happen now. This is the way it's always been operating, but we're just seeing it for the first time. And
Right.
people are finally getting a taste of who our leaders actually are, what the government actually is, and what these agendas are, and the controllers, and what they have in store for humanity. And it's not a good thing, but
Mhm.
the fact that it's being pushed and accelerated is a good thing because I feel like they're scared.
Mhm.
And that's why we talked about the news talking about starseeds. We're becoming an actual threat, and that's how I stay positive. I know we're becoming a threat, and like when we get together at conferences and stuff, we create this massive ripple effect, this tidal wave of light that just spreads across the entire planet, and they hate that. But I think it's extremely effective. And they
Mhm.
don't want us traveling. I feel like they don't want us traveling because we also, when we travel, we're doing grid work,
Mhm.
energetic grid work, and they don't want you going to certain countries. They still have mandates and the whole jab thing in place. So just to keep people, and you turn on the TV, you don't want to go to any of these countries because they make it look horrible.
Mhm.
With Australia, it looked like the worst place in the world during COVID, but I went there anyway. And I got there. I'm like, where's all the shit that I was seeing on TV? It's not there. It's so much propaganda. They just create this fake reality. Like, there was no one wearing masks. It was so laid back. It was beautiful. I'm like, I'm so glad I got to experience that, because had I not done that, I would have just thought Australia was this horrible, dark place. And,
Mhm.
Melbourne, there's certain areas that had it tough. They had a hard time, but
Mhm.
those are small, localized areas. That's not the entire continent, right? But they only show you that part of it because they don't want you to travel. And I think part of that reason is because when we travel, we activate certain ley lines and grid points and turn Mother Nature or Mother Earth back on.
Mhm.
And they don't want that either.
Right. Yeah. Whenever I went to Arkansas recently to board camp, which is a really cool place near Mena, Arkansas, whenever so the crystal mine, I went off by myself to meditate, see if we can get the Sasquatch in. And then like a whole Sasquatch family appeared, and they told me that I had keys to help activate the land, and they helped me connect with the crystals and the crystalline grid. And I don't know, it was just really cool. I was like, I have keys.
It's
I know they
it's
had some keys for me too, but it was like a mutual, like a very beneficial thing for everybody involved, and they were super excited about it. So
it's
that's cool.
true. We all have keys and codes that can unlock things and activate certain energy centers and stuff like that. And just by traveling, we do that without even realizing that we're doing it. And
Mhm.
it's a beautiful thing, I think. I was gonna
Mhm.
say something. Oh yeah, the board camp. Yeah, the Sasquatch experience out there. It's amazing. Uh,
Mhm.
I had some really cool experiences out there as well, and I took some crystals home, and I didn't wash them right away, and it was like a year or two later, I finally pulled them out to wash them one day, and you can't help but to grab those crystals and think of Sasquatch, right? Just because it's all connected. And as I'm washing them at my counter, I hear this whistle like in my ear, like in my house, not a bird outside. but it was more of like it's like a whistle I can't mimic. It's hard to explain.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought I was hearing things, but then immediately I thought like that's the Sasquatch. Like they're here, like just playing with me. They know I'm cleaning these crystals, and I wrote it off and I'm cleaning it, and I heard it again, even clearer the next time, and then I got full body chills. I'm like, okay, that's them, you know.
Wow.
They can be in your house. You don't have to go into the woods to find them. Obviously, it might be easier to connect, but if you
Hmm.
do that, ask them for permission to be on their land and don't just go, stomping around out there.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, I've been seeing them almost every day since I got back from Arkansas, just like through psychic connection. And the first time I found out that I had a Sasquatch guide, um, I went out and did like a photo shoot for a family, and the first picture I knew it was my Sasquatch guide. It was just super weird. It was like a big, like dark brown, just figure. It was very fuzzy. And I was like, holy shit. Like just kind of like manifested, you know. I didn't see them with my eyes, but yeah, you can feel them and they can be there even if you don't see them,
Right. Yeah. I
which
mean,
is pretty cool.
they're living in another dimension that exists like just outside of our visible spectrum, right? So they can be standing next to you, but you can't see them just because of however that works, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's Sasquatch, where the conference is going to be. There's even like a
Mhm.
Sasquatch sign there, so I'm excited. Last year it was kind of like raining, so I didn't go out on a hike or anything, but I'm excited to connect with the Sasquatch in that area. And I wanted to ask you about Cahokia Mounds also. So if anybody's coming to the conference, definitely like I'm down to go to Cahokia Mounds the next day, take a trip. So Cahokia Mounds is like the most ancient city in North America. The They're these, you know, like ancient mounds, kind of
Mhm.
like Serpent Mound in Ohio, but not a serpent.
Right.
And I've just had some amazing experiences there, and the star beings have shown me it basically like remote viewed past, you know, the past where the Pleiadians and these light blue skinned beings, Lyrans, were there with the Native Americans, like teaching them agriculture, helping them to create this huge city. And I know there's something under there too. They kept
Mhm.
showing me there's something underground and nobody's dug that up. So I guess you wanted to do like a documentary on that. Do you have any thoughts on Kokia?
Yeah, so it's an amazing place. There's 80 mounds total, which is a lot, but most of it is, it's you have the Cahokia Mounds site in the park and everything, but the mounds extend way out beyond that. They're in the middle of neighborhoods and just all over the place just because people didn't know what they were when they started building the infrastructure. It extended all the way across the Mississippi River into St. Louis too, and there is a history of that. There was 40 mounds in St. Louis. It was called Mound City before it was St. Louis, and they leveled 40 mounds to build downtown St. Louis. And there was an old star fort there, and there's evidence of that. And um, there's one mound still standing that you can go visit. It's right along Highway 55. People drive past it every day. They have no idea, but it's still there. And then they do have a monument in St. Louis, Mound Street. They have a little rock with a plaque on it that commemorate Mound City, the city they destroyed to even put the plaque there in the first place.
Mhm.
Uh, it's funny, but Cahokia itself, yeah, they found giant skeletons there. There's newspaper articles that prove that with the double rows of teeth. So there were clearly some other species. Um, Even when you go into the museum, they talk about unsexed skeletons. I don't even unsexed beings that they found, whatever that means. We were trying to figure out what unsexed beings, whatever that means, but they say it like they tell you without telling you. They found something, but less
Mhm.
than 1% of the entire site has been excavated, and I wonder why. But I heard they just got a grant or something to start excavating more of it. So it'll be interesting. I think they're trying to turn it into a national park. So I think they need more like something. I don't know what they're just trying to. I don't know why they got the green light to do that, but they're trying to turn it into a national park. And once that happens, then they can really take control of that area.
Mhm.
But the big mound, People have remote viewed it. Dowsers have gone out there. There's been so many people that say that they think there's like a 20 to 30-foot tall skeleton buried in that big mound. And they tried drilling down, and this was even in the mainstream history. They tried drilling down into that mound, and they hit something, I think 30 feet down, and they couldn't penetrate it. They
Hmm.
said they were drilling for like a water drainage system, but it is on record that there's something 30 feet down that they could not penetrate.
Mm.
And it's anyone's guess on what's actually down there. But what's really interesting about that main mound is that so it's massive. I think it has the same dimensions of the Great Pyramid of Giza at the base, or at least roughly. It's really close to it. Obviously not as tall, but three sides are completely clear. But the back side, and you can climb up all three sides and the front. There's stairs, whatever. But on the back side, it's completely overgrown, and there's a sign that says, "Please do not climb." I'm like, why don't they want you to climb on the one side of this mound? And it's completely grown. You can't even see it, right? Overgrown. And you can't, it's so thick you can't even climb through it. Like it's almost intentional. And one day I was there just laying on the side of that big mound. I think on the east side of it. I don't know anymore. But I was meditating
Mm-hmm.
and I was shown an entrance on the back side, like buried underneath all that brush where they don't want you to climb it. So I feel like they've at one point discovered an entrance that there's something underground, and that might be the access point, and that's why they have that shut down. But there's a massive history there. The Birdman, they found a bird. They dug up the Birdman. It was a they say it was a human dressed like a bird, and there was like this winged garb and all this stuff. And near him, they found a Birdman tablet, which I think is an ancient piece of technology. It's this little stone tablet with a bird on it, and it has like this weird pattern on it. And I just feel like I forgot where I got this concept from, but some of these stone artifacts have other components and other dimensions that we can't see. That's why like an ET race could come and use it as a technology still, because they understand the components and how it all works and they can activate it. But when I see that thing, I'm telling you, I know it's some sort of ET tech. And it's
Mm-hmm.
on display in the museum. It's a tiny little tablet, but they call it the Birdman tablet. So
Wow.
there's a whole like avian bird being theme there as well. I mean, it goes on and on. There's so much to explore. I can go on about that site, but yeah, it's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely down to go if anybody wants to go the day after the conference. I've had some really cool experiences there. I went and meditated on top of the biggest mound, and I had a friend with me, and they were like, "Open your eyes, open your eyes." And there were three hawks just super close to us. And then I looked around. There were no hawks there like 5 minutes before that. I looked around, and there were like a dozen hawks just flying around us
Mm.
and the mound. It was incredible, and I've caught some UFOs on camera there as well, and definitely orbs.
Oh, I
So
think
it's a fun.
it's like a spaceport. I mean, who knows what's actually going on there? Any of the ancient sites, we just think they're so insignificant, and that obviously it was booming at one point. It was the largest civilization in the world, second to London, which I forgot, like 50,000 people, or maybe 500,000, whatever it was, something crazy.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think we were trying to get a group of people to go the Saturday after the conference. So the Friday, people are going to be, the people who are flying out, we got to make sure that they get to the airport and stuff like that. But the Saturday after that, weather permitting, we were going to try to get a group of people to go out there and just
Hmm.
do a little field trip. So if anybody wants to, stick around for that, if the weather's nice, it'd be awesome to go out there.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about that I find it so fascinating, the inner earth beings. So
Mm.
the inner earth beings I've been working with them a lot more the last probably like 4 months or so. No, maybe it's almost been like a year now. And you had a really cool experience with an inner earth being. Can you kind of share
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, so a lot of people have an issue with this story because it all stemmed from Corey Good, and obviously there's a whole controversy surrounding him and his testimony. But regardless, it prompted me to have this experience. He
Hmm.
would talk about the inner Earth civilization that he was communicating with, and even the city that he visited, and he just kind of made it sound extremely simple that you could connect with them also.
Hmm.
Um, he explained how you could do it, and I was just like, just do a state of meditation, and I mean, you connect with these beings all the time. It's pretty simple, but I didn't know
Yeah,
it
I
was
was
that.
just curious, like, what's your point of view for how to connect with them, though?
Well,
Just
at
getting
at,
them
at the
relaxed.
time, he described a whole group of them being our guides. So he said they have like this room down there with these like what he would call like these floating chairs that they all sit in, and they connect to people on the surface, and they're actually our spirit guides, some of them, and they're just like assigned to a certain group of us or one of us or whatever.
Mhm,
Or if people are trying to connect, they'll pick up on that and they'll connect with that person. So I had that visualization, right? And somebody told me when you're trying to connect to somebody, imagine and like an etheric cord coming from your third eye and connecting with whoever else's third eye that you're trying to communicate with. So that's what I did. I imagined one of them sitting in the chair down underground somewhere, whatever, wherever, and I would just extend that energy cord out from my third eye to whoever. I didn't even know. I was just putting it out there, and I was putting protection up. I did know that much. And I
mhm.
did this for like a month or 2 straight with no success at all. Like, I would just sit there at night at the end of the day. I became extremely obsessed with it, actually. Like, it's all I was, like, constantly even throughout the day, I started trying to, like, put the intention out there, and, just became, like I said, obsessed, and every night I would sit. It was warm out at the time, I remember, so I'd go outside and sit there and just try to connect, and nothing
For
happened.
how long? For how long? I'm curious.
I would just it would be like a 10 or 20-minute meditation. I
Okay.
wasn't like that was it. I wasn't like out there for hours and hours, but
Mhm,
I was doing it daily
mhm,
and nightly. And then I would come into bed and lay in bed and even try to do it in bed, but nothing ever happened. But I just something kept telling me just keep going.
mhm.
And this is where it gets crazy. This is the part people can't believe, but I don't care. This is what happened. So, um I fell asleep one night after doing this and I woke up to a text message. My phone was on my nightstand and it was from an unknown number. It said, "Are you ready to meet us?" And for some reason, I knew it was them, even though I didn't know who it was. Like, I just had this sense like it was them. And I said, "Of course." My eyes were all foggy and stuff. And I'm like, "Of course." And they said, "Come to your back door." Well, I sleep in my basement and I have a walkout basement. So I knew they meant my walkout basement door, my back door. So I got up and I opened the back door. It's like a summer night. I opened the back door, I opened the screen door. I don't know what. I'm half expecting not to see anything. The other half of me is expecting to see like a UFO or something like landed in my yard. I don't know. And I open the door, I'm looking out there, I don't see anything at all. Well, I'm looking up, I'm looking around. And then I'm like, man, like my friends, somebody's pranking me or something. Somebody's fucking with me. Uh, I stood out there for, I don't know, a couple minutes just looking. And I was like, really, really, really wanted to see something. I wanted it to be true so bad. And then I just had to like admit the fact that I probably was being pranked by somebody or whatever. So I I turned around to come back inside. And as soon as I turned around, I saw this tall blonde woman like half phased into my basement. And it scared the shit out of me. Like, I wasn't scared of her, but when you're in the middle of the night not expecting to see someone standing there, I don't care who you are, you're gonna freak out. Instead of having a reaction, it was like that sleep paralysis type of feel, like I couldn't move, I was frozen. But what I realize now in hindsight is I think she had to alter the density of the room to even appear in the manner that she did, because they're so high vibe and they're from a higher density that they can't just show up here in like physical form. So I
Mhm,
feel like she had to change or manipulate the density in the room, and when she did that, it literally froze me. I couldn't move or function in it, but I could see enough of her, like the top 3 quarters of her body. Her feet, her legs never fully came in, and she was wearing this white robe with like this gold lining, with a blue like undershirt and this medallion on, and she had blonde hair, extremely beautiful, tall,
mhm.
and it was like this whole telepathic exchange. Like, I didn't even hear an audible voice at this time, but I got the message. It's so hard to explain to somebody how you heard something without hearing the voice. But I got the message, honey, you're not ready. And it was the like the most kindest, sweetest energy.
Aw.
And as soon as she said that, she just disappeared, and like the trance was broke, and I was able to like get out of it. And the first thing I did was run back into my room to check my phone. I had to screenshot those texts. I'm like, I've got to tell people about this, right? And there was no text on the phone. There was no history. Like there was nothing, no proof of it. But I did notice that my dog looked like she was sedated. Like she was completely out. If I get up and open the door in the middle of the night, my dog is out the door, no matter
Mhm.
what. It didn't even dawn on me at the time that my dog wasn't was still sleeping. It's almost like they did something to her. Um, so I don't know, to keep her sedated or sleeping so I could have the experience. But I went in, checked my phone. I was so bummed out. Like I kept double, triple checking, making sure like it's gotta be here somewhere. There's gotta be, and there was no text. And I'm like, damn.
Damn.
Uh, so I end up going back to sleep eventually, if I even fell back asleep, you know. And I
Mhm.
just all I could think about the next day, all day, like, and it was like this whole download. The whole message was like, I wasn't ready, and she was trying to tell me that you have so many other things to be focused on. You're here on a mission, like, communicating with us is really the last thing you need to be doing. Like, you have other things in your life, you have healing to do, it was just all apparent to me. I'm like, "Okay, I can see where I need to focus." It was
Mhm.
this whole download, and it just kept coming the whole next day. I'm writing about that in my book, but, um so I laid down in bed the next night. I know I got the message like, okay, I don't need to be focused on communicating with you guys. I have other things to do, but can you at least tell me your name? Like can I at least know your name? So I laid down in bed and I did the whole connection thing, and I said exactly what I said. I know, you don't want me reaching out, but can you at least tell me your name? And instantly, almost instantly, like I was wearing headphones. This is the first time it's ever happened. I've heard anything audible in like the most Lord of the Rings elvish type of voice. She said, "Si corse pri foxe," like this beautiful voice. And like I had to write it down. I didn't know how to spell it.
Right?
For some reason, I had a orange colored pencil on my nightstand and this like waxy piece of cardboard from like I think my passport came in it or something. I don't know what it was. But trying to write with a colored pencil on that waxy, filmy cardboard, it really didn't work. So I'm like denting it in, but I didn't need to write it down anyway because it was like tattooed onto my brain. I just kept hearing it over and over, and
Mhm.
so I got that name. And it wasn't until years later where I woke up in like mid converse. It was almost like my higher self was in mid conversation with this woman, and I recognized the voice. Like the whole like what they were saying, it immediately like slipped my. I couldn't grab on to what they were saying, but I knew her voice, and then I said, "Corse, is that you?" And she said, "Yes." And it was like, and then that was it. And then the whole experience like just left me, and I woke up. I'm like, no, trying to close my eyes again, like to call her back in. But so I wonder if like I'm still in communication with her, but maybe my higher self is, or a version of me is that I'm just like not aware of.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting while you're talking about it.
Yeah. It
I
was
feel like
pretty,
probably watching right now.
probably. I mean, it was profound. I mean, to say the least. It was,
Yeah, that's
I've told the
amazing.
story so many times, but it's like, it's just like tattooed.
Yeah, no, that's incredible, and I love the inner earth beings. So do you think that she was, like, physically manifesting, or do you think it was like a hologram type
That's a
deal?
good that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if
Mhm,
they have a way to project themselves to just, like, visually like a hologram just to like,
mhm,
seem like they're there, but not really, or I don't think she was physically there. I don't know how it works. I really don't
mhm.
know. It's anyone's guess.
Yeah, well, not too long ago, I had my first kind of similar experience like that with inner earth beings where they came into my room. I got the message, go lay down. They wanted to do some work on me. Like, we're here, go lay down. So that I went and laid down in my bed. And then suddenly, like, I couldn't see them with my eyes, but I felt so strongly. Suddenly, there were two beings on each side of me from inner earth. And I started
Wow.
feeling them moving their hands over my energy, and I felt like it felt like they were literally right here, and then there was other ones in the room, I just couldn't see them, but I'm like, "Dude, they're right here, I can feel them doing stuff on me," but you just can't visibly see them.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty
That's
interesting.
amazing. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I think they're working with us, but we have to. I mean, they probably want to work with everybody, but I think people have to get to a point where they allow that and hold space for that to occur.
Mhm,
And sometimes we're in situations in life where I don't think they can really reach us like they want to. And even still, I know I always get the message that there's things I could be doing to really open myself up for that communication. But then simultaneously, I always get the message that you're shielding yourself for some reason. Like it's almost like I've experienced so much dark stuff that like I'm almost afraid to open up fully to make that communication because I know the trickery and deception and the manipulation that occurs. So I'm overly skeptical when it comes to that.
mhm,
But I know if I really sat with it and like learned how to like remove that shield, it's not even something I try to do. It's like I've like somehow subconsciously like permanently got it up, like this wall up, because
mhm.
I've just been experienced so much of the dark. It's just not. It's no way to live, you know? So I'd
Right.
love to open myself up to the positive beings, and I try to, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, definitely. And something that helped me with that was the root chakra, really deep diving into the root chakra.
Mhm.
I started experiencing a lot of negative, um, so like visions and psychic attacks and things like that, just really morbid visions whenever my psychic senses started opening. Like I experienced the love of Star Family, and then it's like, boom, there's this other stuff. And yeah,
Yep.
that's what they told me to do. They said it was getting in through my root chakra, and I really had to focus on that for like a month.
The root and the sacral, and I always get that message too, and I'm constantly doing meditations and trying to clear them. But I don't know, I'm still working on it. Like I have to
Mhm,
figure it out for whatever lesson is in that for me and whatever I need to do to clear that out. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now on my journey. Like I'm trying to navigate this and figure out like what's out of alignment and how I can make the corrections so
mhm,
I can. I even physical my physical body is telling me like I'm out of something's out. Like I still have pain in areas that I know it's tied to an energetic,
mhm.
root energetic cause. So
Right.
I'm not perfect, and it's something that I'm working on every day, but it's not easy. It can be easy. I probably make it way harder than it has to be, but life distracts us at the same time as well.
Just clear your karma.
Right. Yeah.
Just clear the karma. That's where a lot of it I found has come for me. Yeah, just clearing karma. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's a process, and we're all like, I do these activations every week, and I've done so much healing, but I'm still doing healing. It's a
Right.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, it never ends. I mean, it's even because then you're just healing layers and like peeling away like layers of an onion. Like there's always something else under that, and sometimes it gets harder and even darker. Like it's not darker, but like it's something a deeper rooted trauma that you just didn't know
Mhm.
existed there. And then especially if you were used in some type of programs or something, like then you start getting into that aspect of yourself and other versions of you and alters and like your healing aspects of that. So it gets pretty complex, but I think it's you gotta start somewhere, and then
Mhm.
the past life stuff, if you have any past life stuff to heal, it's pretty wild. That's why I'm always cautious of people who think they've like already achieved everything there is to achieve, and they're just like putting themselves on this pedestal. I'm like, those are the people I actually stay away from.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the SSP stuff, definitely. It is. It's like an onion,
Hmm.
with each layer, and then it's like, "Oh, crap. That happened? Okay."
Right, exactly. And a lot of people think it's all bogus, and they think there's nothing to it, but
It
it's
sounds like it. At
right,
first, it sounds like it, but no, it's friggin'
right.
real.
It is, and I mean, you don't even need to like believe in the secret space program. That's why we did UFO for Dummies webinar. Like, there's a basic history of this stuff that all lend towards a secret covert government program. I mean, without the whistleblowers, like we just have a trail of evidence anyway
Mm-hmm.
that basically, in my mind, proves that there is something else. Gary McKinnon's hack in 2002, I think, whenever he hacked NASA and the Navy's server, and
Mm-hmm.
he found a whole database of like a Starfleet, and he even saw a photo of a cigar-shaped craft that was, hovering above our planet, and he got a list of non-terrestrial officers. I mean, all this stuff, and this is coming, from NASA and the Navy, and obviously we know NASA is this dog and pony show, and they're like controlling the narrative on space. But there are factions of NASA. It's all compartmentalized. There are factions of NASA
Mm-hmm.
who are part of this secret space program as well. That's what people don't understand. That's why some whistleblowers said they've even seen people like inside of the moon in their testimonies with NASA like logo on their uniforms. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole you can go on the whole flat Earth thing is a separate topic, but people think since NASA fakes the space footage, that means the Earth is flat, but it actually doesn't prove that at all. That's just somebody connecting dots because they want to connect the dots. But they want to know, then why is NASA faking the space footage? Because like the space station, and there's so much of it that actually is filmed in a studio, and like there's all these discrepancies in the film, and sometimes there's malfunctions and glitches, and you can see the green screen, and it's like very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, if space is real, then why would they need to fake it? I think what they're trying to do, I don't think NASA, the public side of NASA, has jurisdiction in space, actually. I don't think they have control over anything that's going on up there, but they have to appear as if they have to put on the illusion as if the government has control and knows everything that's going on in space, and
Mm-hmm.
that we have control over all that. They want people to think that they're in control of it. So they have to put on this big dog and pony show to make people think that, we got this, it's all under control, when really they have no jurisdiction up there at all anyway. Who knows what groups are controlling that airspace outside of our planet? Solar Warden, for one, which could
Mm-hmm.
be Space Force, but it's not NASA, but for some reason NASA's programmed into everyone's mind and the collective consciousness. You can't go to a store, the mall, Target, Marshalls, doesn't matter, there's NASA shirts. It's just
Mm-hmm.
something about that programming, social engineering.
Mm-hmm.
They want you to think that NASA has control of it all when they don't have control of anything, actually.
Right. What got me was watching the footage of was it Buzz Aldrin, the first men on the moon? Whenever
Right.
they came back, the looks on their faces, they just looked terrified.
Right.
Terrified, so because they saw something up there. I don't and apparently we haven't gone back up to the moon since then. So I don't believe all there's
Right.
some
Well, that's
stuff.
bogus too. I mean, we kind of went into that on that same webinar also. There's so many theories and stories and testimonies and whistleblowers and,
Mhm.
about what actually happened during the moon landings. There's a large percentage of the population that think we never went. I completely disagree with that, actually. If you just read William Tompkins' testimony and listen to his interviews, it makes a lot of sense. It fills in a lot of blanks. It connects some dots. And you couple that with some other stuff that's out there. It's pretty obvious to me that we've been there, but it didn't go the way they planned.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Well, I guess to just wrap it up, and I wanted to mention also, so you and Aaron from who you co-host Journey to Truth podcast, you guys met at a conference, which I think is really cool.
Right. We did actually. We met at a conference in Colorado, Loveland, Colorado, Dimensions of Disclosure in 2018.
Mhm.
We realized that we both were from St. Louis, even though we had to go meet and we had to meet at a conference. I did that one time in Cancun. I met somebody in Cancun on the beach that ended up living like a block away from me. It's weird how you have to go halfway across the world to meet people that live in your own neighborhood, but the
Right.
universe works that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we met at a conference, and it was shortly after that. I didn't really know Aaron. We just met, but we
Mhm.
lived in the same town, and we met up for lunch a couple weeks later, or whatever it was, and we both kind of like knew we wanted to do something, and like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just know I was supposed to be doing something
Mhm.
this direction in this movement, the truther movement. And Aaron, it was his idea actually. He said, "You want to start a podcast?" And at first, I'm like, I'm like, sure, but I didn't think I thought it wasn't the greatest idea, to be honest. Like, I just didn't think I just didn't envision it being anything. But I was like, I'm not doing anything else. Why not? Let's do it, you know? So
Mhm.
we did our first episode, which was a phone call with my dad, just talking about like whatever, this crazy stuff. And um
That's
4 years
awesome.
later, here we are putting on our second conference, and
Yeah.
we've gained this huge following. That's just amazing, and the support. But the bigger we get, the more heat we get as well. So it's pretty interesting nowadays, and it's a tough field to be in, and it's tough to
Mhm.
navigate sometimes because, like I said earlier, there's no foundation of truth to stand on to begin with.
Mhm.
And everyone's belief systems are being challenged right now, and people are getting triggered. But when you get triggered, you have to identify that as like, okay, why am I getting triggered? Because something it's challenging or threatening something that I believe in. And you have to question what you believe in and where does that come from? Is it your own belief or was it handed to you like most of our other belief systems? They're just handed to us as a child. We don't have a choice. We're thrown into church. We're thrown into this religion, that religion, whatever it is. You don't get a choice. Had it been different, if you just grew up in the Amazon somewhere and no one told you anything, like what would you believe in then? Like
Mhm.
what makes any of it real? So it's all belief system, what they call it, the BS, belief system construct, complex, whatever. Like
Mhm.
it's these belief systems ultimately tie us down, I think. And we
Yeah.
carry around our own ball and chain based on our limiting beliefs. So if we can break free from that and expand from that,
Mhm.
anything's possible. That's why we can't be so hard on each other right now whenever, oh, that's not true because I was in Antarctica and I didn't see that, so you can't be right. And I'm like, well, how do you know? Like, no one actually knows anything. We can't be calling each other out on things that haven't actually been recognized as truth in the first place. We're just
Mhm.
trying to figure this out together.
Right. And everybody has different perspectives, different timelines. There's just so much that factors into, you know, everything. So I agree with that. Well, I think
Right.
you've created a wonderful podcast. You have a lot of really awesome resources on your podcast and just a big variety of different stories on there. So I'm really looking forward to the conference. Did you want to share a little bit about the conference or like where people can find you in case somebody doesn't know who you are?
Yeah, so Journey to Truth podcast on YouTube is the best way. You can find us on Telegram, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We don't have massive social media following. We're not doing a whole lot there. It's primarily based around the podcast. So if you want to follow us, we're on Rumble as well, Apple Podcasts, all the audio platforms except for Spotify. They booted us, um, which is interesting. That
Really?
platform, yeah, I don't know why they didn't give us an official reason. It was some bullshit reason, but uh, they kicked us off. So anyway, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Um, But you can find us on all those platforms. And if you want to come to the conference, journeytotruthcon.com is the website for the conference. And all the information is on there. If you want to come hang out, grab a ticket. You don't have to come for the whole time. Like I said, there's day passes, there's full event passes, there's live stream passes if you can't make it in person. It's going to be fun. Like you said, you were there last year. It's a good time. It's a beautiful location.
Mhm.
And even if there wasn't a conference, it's a beautiful place to hang out for 4 days anyway.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, if you're interested, the on-site lodging itself is sold out, but there is camping on site. If you want to camp, it should be beautiful that time of year to camp. But you can camp on site if you can't find a place to stay. There are hotels and Airbnbs nearby if you want to do that. But
Mhm.
yeah, take advantage of that and come hang out with us, and we'd love to see you there.
Yeah, I made a few friends at that conference that I'm pretty close with, that I talk very frequently. So I think just that alone, like making friendships, was worth it.
Right.
Uh,
Well, look
in
at
the
Aaron and I met in the first conference. Like every conference I've gone to, I've met friends and made connections that have changed my life. And
Exactly.
like there's always somebody there waiting for you. Like you're like this soul. You have soul connections with so many people, right? And when you finally get around each other, there's just somebody there always that you connect with, or a few people, and get their contact information, and you have no idea where it's going to take you, but it's beautiful.
Right, 100%. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I'll leave all of your links in that the journeytotruthcon.com link in the description, all of that. So for anybody watching this, go give him a subscribe and check that out. And I guess that's about it. Thank you so much for coming on, Tyler. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you. This was fun.